Hello, and welcome to Takes One to Write One. I'm Katherine Arcady, and I'm a writer. However, my characters are everything but. While research gives me information about their jobs and lifestyles, it doesn't give me the first-hand experience needed to write a well-rounded character. So I created this podcast where I invite people on to talk about their jobs, their hobbies, or their beliefs, because it takes one to write one. This is part 3 of a 3-part series for pilots. I'm talking to Marco and Nate, who have a combined 17 years of experience in the aviation industry. Let's continue to learn about what it's like to be a pilot, because it takes one to write one. What movies, media, pop culture gets it wrong?
Gets it wrong?
Yeah.
Flight.
Why is flight so wrong?
Because we're not all drunk and doing drugs.
So a couple of scenarios, a couple of examples from that first 10 to 15 minute sequence.
When I say we're not all, I mean none of us are drunk and doing drugs because we get randomly drug tested and alcohol tested. You would never see a flight deck again. And you would be prosecuted most likely.
They put the boot on you. I mean, you get caught. They rip your licenses for a year at the very minimum.
I thought it was 3.
It's 1, from what I understand.
Okay. Okay.
Not that I would know. Anyways. Yeah, and then you've got to get a defense lawyer and all sorts of stuff, and there's a trial, and you're blacklisted for a year, and then when you come back, you're just a criminal. Like you're just treated as a criminal.
And the company would rather not deal with that.
Yeah.
To put it into broad spec.
As like a liability?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you are.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you absolutely are. Because I'm sure they have to pay more in insurance on you for you
Insurance,
operating their aircraft.
Well, the amount of money that they would have to, for the HIMSS program.
Oh yeah, no, they got to put you through a special program, and it's basically AA for pilots, and
you're closing a lot of doors when you go down that avenue.
Yeah. I see.
And it's just not worth it.
But anyways, Denzel. So in the movie Flight, I mean, everything's happening all at once. I mean, it's like it kind of reminded me a lot of my flight engineer training when the check engineer was just having fun with the simulator. Everything's on fire. Everything's going to hell. They're playing with the throttles like crazy. After like an engine fire, which like, what the hell are you doing that for? You'd want to diagnose and get that thrust lever to idle as soon as possible, because you don't want to be introducing more fuel into a fire. Clearly. For obvious reasons. Yeah. Because science. They're rolling the aircraft. They're inverted. The attitude indicators, which basically it's that little blue and brown thing that tells you what the plane is doing. It's straight and level the entire time if you're paying attention. You look at it and you go, what the hell? They're making all sorts of absurd call-outs. At one point they had pulled both fire handles, which cuts the fuel off to both engines, shuts the fuel shut-off valve.
Well, one of them was drunk.
Fair.
Oh, so no. The call-outs might not have been standard.
Fair. They had pulled both fuel shut-off handles, or fire handles, whatever you want to call them.
Oh my God, they did.
And then they're still like powering up with the throttle levers. And guess what? Even the editor bothered to put in the noises of the engine spooling up and spooling down. So the engines are shut down because there's no fuel. Obviously,
you're being picky.
He's powering up, and it goes. Like he's getting ready to get out of there. Like, no, man.
It cannot at that point, any range.
The engines are shut down. That's not doing anything except making you feel better.
For me, it's Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
I used to love that movie so much.
It was so good until I became a pilot.
And Ben Affleck.
I can't. Do they see an avoid?
Dude, those P-40s
when they were flying
so
at each
awesome,
other?
though.
Are they going left or right?
What other movie have you seen? I think they cut left, even though
Wait,
the standard
the book
is
tells
cut
you go to the right.
Yeah. Your left or my left?
Yeah.
But what other movie have you seen P-40s in, though? Not a lot.
I don't remember. You're talking to Gen X.
Hollywood, if you're listening, there's a whole lot of airplanes that you're undervaluing, and you need to get in more movies.
Like what?
P-38,
Okay.
P-40, P-39. Not the P-40.
Don't-
Yeah, P-40. Yeah,
Do
P-41.
not look over at me with this
P-
one. I don't know
P-51
airplanes.
gets a lot of attention. Let's see. The Hurricane. Spitfire gets some of them. Actually got a little bit of attention in Pearl Harbor at the end there when he's in the German.
Nerd. I struggle on the ramp to identify like certain airplanes. We're like, yeah, give way to the blah blah blah, and I'm like,
Well, commercial.
okay, we'll give way to the blah blah blah, and
Civilian
I'll like
aircraft
look over
is
at the
different.
captain and be like, what the fuck is that? And I'll be like, I don't know. Like,
Civilian
well,
is different. That's not.
so
Okay.
the Google search will indicate.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. I
Well,
would-
I guess I'm curious how you've gotten so far as you have, and you're
Yeah.
talking about not knowing about how to identify planes.
I would
This
also-
isn't
I
a
would
call
al- I
out.
would
I'm
also
just
like to know
well,
this.
you can also
curious.
come clean. You can also come clean, right? Just be like, I don't know what this is. You might see a little feedback from that from other pilots on the frequency, but I've absolutely said I don't know what this like back in my earlier days
Okay.
of
So you're
regional
learning
flying
now.
and yeah, like I know what
Okay.
they are now. I'd be like, what does that aircraft look like? And they're like, see that first one on the left?
It's the one that
Follow
looks
one.
like a big white bird.
You know, and then I'd look over and I'd see my captain like rubbing his eyes and be like, you could have asked me. And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, don't get roasted over the intercom.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll have fun with it too.
For
Yo, they don't
You'll
have,
end up on ATC memes.
Yeah.
So with call-ins, call-outs, when you're talking about anything over the radio?
Yeah.
Okay. What certain points need to be hit in order to be understood? Like when you're making these calls,
The emphasis.
what are you identifying?
The emphasis is standard phraseology.
Where
So,
you are, no, sorry, who you are, where you are,
What
where
you
you're
want.
going.
Okay.
Where you're going, what you want.
Or what you want to do.
Mm.
You know, super important in Atlanta. Detroit, you get about 3-4 tries. Atlanta, you get one shot.
And-
you don't
and some-
get it. Oh, even worse, New York. Oh my goodness.
See ya.
So when a bunch of people are queuing up at the same time, they don't get to talk all over each other, right?
One at a time, otherwise.
One at a
there's
time, or it sounds like.
Because you've got those intersecting waves that are causing havoc with the radio, right?
Yeah, and then you got those freaking guys that are out there that are just holding down their mic
Because they're mad that they have to.
because
wait.
they're mad that they have to wait. Connor, that just hold it down.
Yeah, Connor.
And and they just hold it down and they just wait for everybody to go silent. They're like, yeah, blah blah blah, 4785, waiting at spot A4. Yeah. And they'll just sit there and hold down their mic.
Is that kind of a dick move?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my
That's-
god.
Not only is it a dick move, but it's a safety of flight issue.
Oh.
Well, I mean, on the ground.
That's a safety
no.
issue. That is, you can't contest with me that that's not a safety issue.
No, I won't even try.
You are impeding ground communication. Someone's gonna.
No.
Air
I'm
China's
not.
gonna end up slamming into somebody.
No, I'm not impeding, or I'm not saying that that's not a safety issue. If you're with ramp control going over to ground control, well, yeah.
But that's
no.
intersecting territory, though. Go ahead, continue.
We have a safety team over at.
Oh, good. They can tell you all about it.
I said the company name. You can't put that in there.
Oops. Yeah, bleep.
Yeah, just bleep that
See
one
ya.
out. At X Airline.
Yeah. At beep.
So you're talking to.
There are multiple frequencies that you will talk to before you get out to the runway. So, for example, when you're talking to Minneapolis, we're kind of tucked away in an alleyway, right? Meaning that there's gates around an island, if you will, and then there's gates in between that island and the main terminal, right? Where you might have to take a bus or a train or like an underground walkway that you have to get to. And there's multiple planes that could be backing into each other. So you'll talk to ramp control first, right? Now, once you talk to ramp control, they'll allow you to push back. You'll get your engine started up, and you'll do your checklists or whatever.
So
They don't say, I'm ready to taxi. Well, they'll tell you to taxi to a certain spot, and then you'll talk to ground control. Ground control is responsible for every aircraft that's operating around the property on the ground, essentially, until you're just pulling up shy of a runway. Now you're talking to tower. Tower sends you off to departure, which is otherwise known as TRACON. And talk to departure to center, center to center.
ARTCC.
Yep, ARTCC. And, well, you don't call them that, but you call them center. And
yeah.
You are essentially talking to different control centers that are responsible for different flight levels and different airspaces. So that's the way it's organized.
Yeah, the less time you take on the airways, the better. Unless you're sitting there doing the Dallas auctioneer voice and nobody can understand a word you're saying because you're going so fast. And sometimes controllers are guilty of it too. JFK. And obviously it scales with it scales with airport size, right? I mean, so this is something we're talking about at Bravo Airspace, Bravo Airport, which is something like Detroit, Atlanta, JFK, Cincinnati, Chicago. Yeah, so there's a multi-tier airspace system. It goes Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Golf, and basically it's different tiers of air traffic control, from a lot to none, basically.
Busyness.
You can think of it as that. It kind of ties into where they're designed and where they're laid out. But yeah,
arrival and departure airspaces are the busiest.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get up into the cruise flight levels, you're basically just being passed along from controller to controller, and occasionally you might get a heading and an altitude.
We're talking about high route traffic, so it's not as crazy
congested.
Yeah.
Now, when you're coming into Atlanta and you're getting passed off the tower, like the frequency before you talk to tower, those are some of the busiest people in the world's airspace itself. And they get paid accordingly.
You get sweaty palms for it.
Perpetual.
So what you just explained, where you get onto it, say I'm ready for taxi, and then you go through it. Is it that way for departure, for ready for takeoff? Is it that order reversed for coming back in?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Absolutely.
Instead of a departure controller, you'll be talking to an arrival controller, and there's different. It's not just one guy working, X station, right? I mean, we're talking about thousands of controllers coordinating with each other between stations, and GPS information, radar information, all sorts of stuff being fed into interrogators, receivers, all sorts of complex equipment.
Interrogators.
Mm-hmm. It's just a type of module that sending a signal, and then the receiver is receiving it and then sending something back, something like that.
I see. What is something that you think most people in your field would like to have changed?
The contract.
Yeah, we covered that.
Look, it's tough. Pilots bitch the most. No, yeah. Honestly, that's what they do.
No matter how good.
No matter how good it will be, pilots will always bitch.
Yeah.
But the company sees it that if it's good enough,
it's good.
It's good. It's good enough. Now that's why most pilot representatives are unionized. There are a few that are not, and there are there's different unions and things like that out there. But the union is who goes to the company and says, "Hey, we want these demands to be met." So it's more or less to better improve quality of life, pay, whatever it might, benefits, health benefits, whatever it might be. for the pilot group as a whole. And without getting too much into detail, that's kind of like what's going on. We're currently under a contract negotiation, and I don't know how much I can say about that without people getting bothered.
Sure. So it's just, getting paid for the work, properly compensated for it.
It's kind of a dual-pronged thing because we kind of talked about it a little bit. This is probably the best it's ever been for pilots, especially pay-wise. The only problem is, the cost of entering the field is still so absurdly high that it's just still not enough, unfortunately, and that makes it hard on the companies because now they're the ones that have to close that gap, which can, from a business perspective, can be problematic.
Yeah, and then you put that on top of inflation and my golf expenses and like all that.
And some of these guys we're talking about have 3-4 ex-wives and.
Okay, that is one of the
stereotypes
is that there is a stereotype. Like it's bad. The divorce rate for the pilot is the highest next to, what is it?
Lawyers,
lawyer or
doctors.
Doctor? Yeah, lawyer and doctor.
Why do you why do you think that is?
It's not why that is, it's what it is. It's when you get onto a,
you're married to your career in this field because this is a passion above all else for most people.
No.
I would say. He's just saying that because his girlfriend's here.
No, and my girlfriend is her sister, so.
Oh, spoiler alert!
Yeah, spoiler.
You wonder how I got this interview.
Hey.
No, it's common. It's common. Like people who don't have moral obligations or are new in their relationships or just haven't had this exposure before, they slip up when they realize it's one big rolling party. When
there's a lot of freedom, there's a lot of free time, especially when you're not flying. You've got a lot of time to think when you are flying, and then some people just can't resist those impulse temptations and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they're there. You spend a lot of time with these people. You spend a week, call it a spring break, if you will. In some circumstances, you go to Cancun with people for 2-3 days at a time, and you spend a lot of time with each other. Plane breaks down. Next thing you know, you're there for 4 days at a time, and some people establish relationships in a very short amount of time, and
short attention spans.
Flight crews date, and they shouldn't.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because my cousin is a flight attendant at United, and she has told me.
Yeah, no, it's just I think just because of the way that the job is set up, that we're talking about doctor. Let's talk about doctors, right? These guys are working 18 hours a day.
Okay.
Some pilots are working 18 plus hours a day. Lawyers, depending on their dedication, 12, 16 plus hours a day. I would argue that there's a direct correlation between time spent on the job, time spent away, between those divorce numbers, and also just because of generational differences and stuff like that.
I see.
But yeah, it's bad out there, period. But yeah, I think for some people that they, it just doesn't work out the way that everyone thinks it is. A lot of people get the fairy tale mentality of, oh, well, we can go anywhere, do anything, and they have kids and stuff, or they start buying big houses that they don't need, boats, toys, stuff like that, start stretching themselves thin, especially after a captain upgrade. This happens all the time. They've got all this money, they start buying all this stuff, and then something happens, stress load increases, you've got all these things feeding into it, somebody becomes irritable, and then it just starts, it becomes a cascading effect of just negativity and stuff, and it just, not great.
You mentioned generational differences. Is it something that you notice, more wild with the younger crowd, more wild with the older crowd?
So this is kind of non-piloty topic here, and I'm guessing this is going into your earlier thing we talked about over there about character profiles. It's an unwillingness to put in the work with younger generations, I would say. And not that I'm a holier than thou kind of person, but like I think moral compasses have definitely changed over the years. People know what they want, and then they don't, and then they want to do something, and then they don't.
I see.
And I don't know. It's just kind of like we have all this stuff at our fingertips. We've got information at our fingertips in milliseconds, right? We've got short attention spans, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to whip up their behavior or whatever, but it's just this is what things have become.
Certainly, and I'd say that's across all industries. With the younger people always attached to their phones, or you said everything is at their fingertips. Speaking of fingertips, is there a physical item related to piloting or aviation that you guys cherish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. Just kidding.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's that is a hard, easy question to answer. It's got to be my headset.
Okay.
But I love and hate my headset.
Oh yeah.
I have a nice headset. It's the Bose, the A220. It's the A20.
I'd fly an A220.
It's the Bose A20s. But golly, if you're having a busy day and you're just having a packed schedule, those things start to hurt after a while. They make in-ear headsets now, but
it's kind of
it's.
I don't know about you, but my A20, the little hand control module and the
like
phones and the head support thing, it's all badged
some
up
people
now.
live and die by the ability to have noise canceling. I can't do it.
No.
It bothers me.
See, I like it, but the problem
It bothers me in the jet. I had to have it in the prop plane.
The problem is having it and then not.
Right.
Oh.
Because it uses little AA batteries, so I usually keep rechargeables or something in there. But if you forget or it's a long day or something like that, and they go out, all of a sudden it goes, poof, and all of a sudden you're hearing everything, and it's kind of like ugh.
Yeah.
So does each pilot have their own headset that
Yes.
they hook up?
Yes.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, if you forget your company iPad,
You get a company iPad?
yeah,
Oh.
which has all of your forums, your company manuals, systems books, standards of the company, when to show up. It goes from how to wear your suit to how we operate as a company from outside the airport, inside the airport, up in the air to landing, and everything in between, security threats. If you don't have that, it's not as big of a deal as if you don't have your headset. Believe it or not.
Interesting. And all communication is done through your headset with the hookup. Is there a separate
there's like
mic?
speakers and hand mics, but yeah,
There's speakers and hand mics, but at the end of the day, the FAA and the company can show up at any time and say, we're going to examine you today.
Oh.
Yep, it's called a flight check.
Yeah, and if you don't have that headset,
If you don't have a headset,
that's the start.
like that extra headset that's in the airplane for the FAA or the company to wear, the company better be notified prior to that. Let me just say that.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. And as far as talking to passengers, there's kind of this meme of, pilot speak. Is it across board?
You're gonna have to delve into that a little more for us. Yeah.
how does one adopt the pilot speak? Is it just, you hear it from
I
everybody?
I feel like at this point
Are you guys guilty of it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's
absolutely.
I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't guilty of it at some point or another. But like you have those longer days, and I'm just kind of moving along. And I'm like, I need a little entertainment here,
and it just happens.
Yeah, folks from Flight Deck, 20 more minutes of nap time till we are in Detroit. Weather Detroit 70 degrees Fahrenheit, clear skies. For those that are still awake, thanks for choosing Delta Connection. At this time, flight attendant Ramon, please prepare the cab for arrival.
Ping pong.
Yeah.
So you can be kind of fun with it.
You can.
Yeah.
Preferably not.
Okay. Why preferably not?
Because they say if you are going to make a joke, it is likely to offend somebody.
Yeah.
And to tread carefully.
So if somebody wasn't in this field, if
Okay.
somebody didn't know about piloting, didn't know very much about aviation, me, for example.
Sure.
If I weren't in this field, I would never believe what?
I would say,
on a good day, how little we do.
Yeah. The best days.
On the best days, we don't do
workload.
shit.
The best days have the least workload.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honest to God, we on the best days. Now, ask Emma. She will tell you when I've had my worst days, and it's a lot. It can be a lot. It's, you get just.
Oh, I've had 20-something hour days where,
legally,
they call me out.
We would be dropped from that best case scenario on those days. In your base, let's say you get a room at your base. Those are the nicest hotels, typically.
Yeah.
Okay.
For regionals. Once you get to mainline, every hotel is the nicest.
I see. Do you have a preferred hotel? Do you know the hotels in the country?
Shout out to Marriott.
The Westin and Detroit, y'all keep doing your thing.
Okay.
Yeah, any Westin is just.
Well, it's good to know.
Wild. And when I say wild, I mean it's just like they have good accommodations. It's very consistent. There's a lot of hotels that are out there that are in smaller towns that might have a history of unsolicited interactions, bed bugs, whatever the circumstances might be. And there, that history kind of follows the hotel and with the destinations and things like that. But nonetheless, it remains at destinations, and there might be, or the destination might remain, but there's a very limited amount of hotels that we end up in.
Well, I would say a couple of things to go off this question. For anyone who has a pilot friend, no, they can't get you free airline tickets. 2, for any younger pilots or people still going through the process trying to get to where they want to be, there's a lot of ups and downs. It's not this big catch me if you can glorified lifestyle all the time. Like I alluded to earlier, I mean, I've had 20-something hour days, stuff goes wrong, freight delays, and I've been called out at 3 o'clock in the morning after not getting any sleep. And although I did get my 8 hours in the 24-hour period, FAA, sometimes just stuff goes wonk. So just above all else, be ready for the wonk. And that'll best prepare you for a career in the aviation field.
You've mentioned, the newer prospects and stuff. Is there any advice that you have for them outside of, just keep pushing through, or something that you can tell them to curb their enthusiasm?
It's not just you. Keep working through it the best you can. Perseverance is the name of the game.
That's tough because that is the thing is you are putting yourself through a medical school style scenario because you have to think of the long run. And a lot of people lose sight of that.
Yeah. And we're talking about, forgive the outdated mannerism, we're talking about separating the men from the boys. But, it's a real sink or swim kind of field.
And there are also, you can't really say men from the boys anymore.
That's why I called it an outdated mannerism.
Well, I get it. But, like, there are guys and girls that are out there that you really have to dig deep. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of sacrifice that goes into it monetarily, time, and you want to talk about how you were talking about how do you interact with your friends on the days that you don't get weekends? It's most weekends.
Yeah.
The most senior people get weekends off, but by achieving that, you've given that up already.
Yeah. Paid your dues.
But, pilots back in the day gave up a little bit more than we have because we have text messaging, FaceTime, we have everything in between. That's made it a little bit easier. My relationship with my family, girlfriend, and everything in between. Has made it just a little bit easier, but yeah, no, there's a lot of sacrifice. For example, when I was going through my training as a May 10 hire, I was giving up my entire summer, and all I would see is people out on the boat, people out having fun. Meanwhile, I'm in this wall-to-wall room, white room, no windows. That was the worst part.
Yeah, that's
no
the worst.
Fucking windows. And I would have to sit there and listen to 8 and 9 hours of lecture. Then I have to go home and study every last little bit of that lecture. Go to bed, wake up the next day, expect to be able to retain that, move on to the next section, right? And the stuff that we're going over, it's no joke. Like, you gotta know it. It's like that stuff's no bullshit, because when multiple systems are interacting with each other and you have multiple failures at one time, God forbid, you got to be able to diagnose what's going on and how it's interacting with each other. Is it interacting with each other? So it's I'd say that there's plenty of things going on there, sacrifice and things like that.
And at the end of the day as well, I mean, no matter what, there's no such thing as much as this is going to probably scare the pants off someone. There's no such thing as a perfect pilot. There's too many factors. There's too much going on. No matter how much you study, no matter how smart you are or think you are, at some point in your career, something's going to happen, and you may or may not handle it the correct way. That's just how it is.
And to kind of add to that, there's you're not going to get a perfect computer either. You're not going to get computers that will fly airplanes better than pilots. It's not going to happen. And I will argue with anybody till the end of time that you will not get that human that sixth sense, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? That you talk about the sixth sense being the gut feeling of, no, this goes beyond training. And that's that Sully scenario that we talk about.
Sully scenario, and there's no computer that's going to look outside that window and see a fast forming thunderstorm and go, you know what, this approach probably isn't a good idea.
No, and you take that scenario, you put it into the computer, and they tell you go to Teterboro, and you end up in the approach lights, and you end up landing short of the runway, and you end up with that airplane falling into a million pieces, and you have a huge mess with casualties.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, unfortunately, within our line of work, that's the risk, is that people traveling, just like in a car, just like on a train, just like on a bus, just like walking down the side of the road, there's a risk of, some freak accident happening, and you have
people are trusting
loss
you
of
with their lives.
Yeah. And the eeriest thing with that is when you declare an emergency on an airplane, they want to know how much fuel do you have? And when they refer to your passengers, they say, how many souls on board?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Why?
That's old terminology.
Old terminology. How many lives do you have on board? How many souls are on board?
Ooh, that gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Well, I sold my soul to the bank to become a pilot, so.
Yeah, no, but when you say 50 souls on board, we have an hour of fuel. Our bingo fuel, when we need to make a decision and be going to an alternate destination, here's how much time we have.
Yeah.
Let's get to work.
You better get that number right, too.
Yeah. You don't want to mess around. You don't want to come up with some random number. You can tell air traffic control, I'll get back to you.
Stand by
I'll
one.
let you know.
Yeah.
Sure.
Stand by. Yeah,
In fact,
stand by one.
In fact, that's another great piece of advice. If you've got an emergency, something's happening fast,
Don't be impulsive.
tell them, stand by, we'll get back to you. Fly the airplane. That's something that will be driven home throughout the entirety of your career. Fly the airplane.
Rules 1, 2, 3. Aviate, navigate, communicate.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That radio terminology and that radio communication is not going to do any good.
No
when
one
you're
gives a shit, especially if you give them a wrong number, because they'll vector you every which way to Sunday. Because, you got 3 hours on board? No, we have 30 minutes. Whoops, forgot to take away one of the zeros.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Take your time. Be correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is. Wow. You mentioned souls being old terminology. Is there other old terminology that's bled through?
I feel like there's a lot of it. Just none of it really comes to mind because it's just second speak for us now. Still using the phonetic. There's a purpose behind that though. It's just kind of helping to articulate different
Alpha, Bravo, Charlie,
I see.
Delta, Echo.
You guys have that memorized now?
Yeah.
Oh
Say it
yeah,
backwards.
name a letter.
Oh.
Oscar.
S.
Sierra.
T.
Tango.
R.
Oh my God.
Romeo.
Romeo.
I had to think about R for a second. Rango.
Rango. My Polish friend Dom, English isn't his first language, and he once said unicorn on frequency with Chicago, and they had all sorts of fun with that.
Well, it's Chicago. So.
Chicago. Hey, yo.
That's funny. So, if you weren't a pilot, if you weren't flying, if this hadn't been your dream, there's no other option for you. There's no other. What would you be doing?
Nope.
It's this and this only.
I can't tell you what I'd be doing.
Okay.
What would I be doing? Sales? Following in the footsteps of brother and dad? I won't say it's been all sunshines and rainbows and unicorns on the way to getting my pilot certificates. It's just like any other job, right? There are good days and there are bad days. But I am extremely thankful that my brother Nico kind of pushed me into go do it, man. Go fight the knit and grit and go be a pilot. Like that. I think that'd be super cool, and I did. And I was a 2.04 GPA student when I was a business college student at Georgia Southern. When I transferred to Western Michigan University as an aviation flight science student, I made Dean's List in I know for a fact 3 semesters. Never confirmed the 4th. I gotta look at my transcript. But it
gets a little muddy towards the end.
Yeah, right. Senioritis, and we were sim partners, believe it or not. Going into one of our last
loft.
Yeah, line-oriented flight training. We flew the airplane that we're flying now for our jobs. And we were sim partners, and it was basically like, how do you work as a crew, right? That's kind of like the university conditioning you to get into that mindset again, right? Hey, like I know you wanted to fly prop planes, but
you're pilots now, but
you're pilots again.
This is the next step,
right? You're not going to live and die by the prop. Props are for boats.
Props are for boats,
right? So, I wrote a recommendation for Nate's, and I referenced that experience from Western Michigan University to the company, and it was just, to this day, I just laugh about it now. But in the loft lesson, you have to give a passenger briefing. And I forget I was in the right seat, and I guess I was acting as captain. Captain always gives the passenger briefing, right? Hey, folks, from the flight deck, just want to give you a welcome aboard. I was supposed to give it, right? We're on our final lesson. This is the final test. This is the final for a college class to graduate. I'm getting ready to make this announcement. Nate completely interrupts me and says, hey, man, I've been waiting my whole life to do this. Grabs the mic. Folks from flight deck, welcome aboard Delta Connection flight, blah, 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 and just starts going off. As you would hear in the memes, the YouTube videos, the radio hosts, the whole mic's like in his mouth, just like this, talking blah, blah, blah. And
we're gain peeking the crap out of this thing.
And the instructor behind us is just doing one of these, nodding along. I was just like, I'm thinking to myself, fuck, damn it, shit, why did you do this?
He's been waiting his whole life.
Yeah, he's been waiting his whole life. I was, at the end of it, I just did one of these. I just kind of started laughing to myself. I was just like, oh my God, no one's going to believe this.
Yeah, and then the
we went on to pass that with flying colors.
Oh,
that's great.
The instructor, Dennis.
Yeah. Dennis. I forget his last name.
I feel bad. Great guy though. Great.
Yeah,
He's an instructor at Western Michigan.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He
one of the
did
better instructors.
Yeah.
More personable stuff like that. He goes, "Wow, that was amazing!" Something like that.
Yeah.
He was all stern faced through. Marco's freaking out.
And he's got this big long wooden stick, right? And so, as being prop students, we don't know anything about the jet. Like, there's a million switches up there, And if you ever got confused on anything with the switches up front, in the jet, he'd take this big long stick and he would tap it on the switch that you were supposed to hit.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah. Because, you're going from, a moped to the new 2023 Cadillac Escalade, touch screen, massaging seats.
He's not stretching when we're talking about Airbus.
It's got Sirius XM,
really?
Siri. It's got Alexa, if you could somehow compare the two and put them together.
So, best job ever.
Best job ever. 99.9% of the time.
I see.
Then there are the delays.
And then there's the delays.
Talking to passengers. But yeah.
No. I'll tell you what, something I'm looking forward to.
Hands down. No.
Oh,
hands down. Best job in the world. Wouldn't trade it for anything. Except for one other thing.
Oh, no, I'm curious. I'm piqued. What is it?
Porn.
Marco.
Jesus Christ. That was going to be the end of the podcast, too.
Okay, I've got something better for you. So, what got me into aviation? When I was a kid, this is the same cliche story most guys will tell you. When I was a little kid, my family was fortunate enough they'd take us down to Florida to Disney World and stuff like that. The coolest part of the trip was, I forget if it was a Spirit or a Southwest flight, but the coolest part, probably Spirit, because we're fancy like that. the pilots would let the little kids come in and check out the cockpit. And I got to go in there and I would see all this crazy equipment, these screens displaying God knows what, these rusty and dusty switches. And, just blew your mind, right? Because I knew how to flip on a GameCube or whatever, or a Nintendo 64.
Ooh, classic.
Yeah, absolutely. And, seeing all that was just incredible. And then, you're in this pressurized tube, and then all of a sudden you're moving, and all of a sudden you're rocketing down a runway at 150, 170, 190, 200 miles an hour. And you're airborne. It's like, holy cow, this is incredible.
I would always compare that to the car I could never afford. Oh man, I'm doing like 200 miles an hour, and oh my gosh, I'm in the air. What Ferrari can do that?
Yeah, no kidding.
That's true.
Take that Lamborghini, but yeah, and then at the end of it, they'd give you a little set of wings, or little cheap plastic wings. And so I made a promise to myself that one day I was going to pass off a pair of cheap plastic wings to somebody.
Oh.
And that was going to be the circle coming to full fruition for me.
Well, I will tell you this. It's about to come full circle for you, man, because I'll tell you what, I never had those experiences as a kid, but I do know a few times where I've passed along some plastic wings, and the smiles that come from the kids are incredible. And this most recent trip I had, there was I noticed a mom and a dad boarding with their 3 kids. And they were right around that age, right? Not toddler, not preteen, early grade school. And I saw them deplaning, but the parents were still seated. I said, hey, do you guys want to come and check out the flight deck? You guys want to come and check out the cockpit? And the kid's face lit up like Christmas morning. And, I was like, get up here. And I said, go sit in that seat. And they're like, really? And it's
don't
just...
touch anything, please.
Yeah, no, don't push any buttons. But, we'll give them like a little demonstration, whatever it is. We'll like shut something down, whatever it is. The most rewarding part of the job is seeing, 2 generations away from seeing the flight deck for the first time, maybe.
You never know that. I mean, those
never know who it is.
Those guys could end up being in your right seat.
Yeah, and of course,
I just
and as today's culture goes, I took mom's phone and started snapping pictures away, and she was like, that was the best thing that happened of all time, and just hoped she saw my name on my name tag and wrote her a good report.
Yeah, there you go. Hopefully it gets back.
Yeah.
So
hopefully they forget about that rough landing.
Well, it's always the rough landing is always the first officers. If it's a good captain, always the captain. Or
right.
Sorry, if it's a good landing, it's always the captain. If not, first officer did.
That's funny.
Right.
That's
well,
really
there's
funny.
some good feels.
Oh, well, I hope you get to hand out those plastic wings.
And he will. There's so many opportunities like that you see, and you almost kind of want to go beyond the flight deck responsibilities to
Here you go.
meet those.
You fly the airplane.
Yeah. Well, no, even like while boarding, like if all of your work is done, you want to go beyond your responsibilities and say, oh, this person is not understanding how pink tags work. Step out of the flight deck, explain it to them.
What are pink tags?
If your bag doesn't fit in an overhead bin above you, you'll have to pink tag check it. So it's basically just checking your bag like you would a white tag bag, like if you're checking it to your destination, except instead of it ending up on a carousel, it ends up at the top of the jet bridge or on the ground. I don't know. Second best job in the world.
Second best job in the world. That's funny. Well,
Retirement's
Marco,
being number 1.
Nate, thank you so much for sitting down with me. It was a pleasure to discuss with you.
Thanks for having us.
About
it was
piloting.
A lot of fun.
I feel like I know so much more. So thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to learn more.
No, thank you.
Hopefully that's enough that you know now to write about being a pilot.
Yeah, just enough to write
A
about.
little bit of insight into what it's like to be a god. And there's the humble aspect for you, folks.
That's really funny. This has been the third part of a 3-part series for pilots. I hope you learned more. I know I did. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next podcast. Follow me at Takes One to Write One on Instagram and Pinterest, and vibe to my curated playlists on Spotify. Until then, I'm Katherine Arcady, and remember, it takes one to write one.